They do this because we're living in a day and time where a lot of people just don't know how to be a little more self-sufficient. And let me say this. I have no problem believing that she would do this, but there is some reporting, and I didn't read what she had to say, but she mentioned, Kamala Harris mentioned about the food and the inflation dealing with food. So some are saying what she is wanting to implement if she is elected is government-controlled food prices. If that happens, our store shelves will become bare, and no doubt. And not only that, but boy, you think the CBDC would be terribly bad. You speak out against your government, and then they start cutting rations down and things like this. Folks, here's the deal. I warned our church 4 years ago not to be taken by surprise if Trump loses, and it didn't appear hardly anyone listened because folks just really got upset and distraught. But I'm going to tell you, do not be surprised, especially now, even your conservative news agencies have got Kamala Harris beating Trump in some of these polls. Folks, we have no idea what's going to happen, but that's not going to alarm us. We're going to do what we need to do. And I know I say this stuff quite often, and I honestly don't think people really believe it. Not that they think I'm lying, but that maybe over-exaggerating it, or I just, I'm listening to the wrong stuff. But folks, I'm telling you, the church, the majority of the church world is in deep trouble. It's I don't know. The only thing I know to do is continue to warn people to get ready. I'm going to take on a subject in Isaiah chapter 6. It's not a new passage. It's a very common passage. Most people know it. I've actually preached from the passage. I'm going to look at it and take it from just a little bit of different perspective. I'm going to look at Isaiah chapter 6, and even though the word worship isn't in this chapter, but it has all the components of worship. And anyone that would read it would know that Isaiah, these heavenly beings, they are worshiping God, and we're going to take a little closer look at that, because the majority of the Christian world, if not all, when we think about worship, we think about music. And when we think about worship music, we think about music that soothes our soul, that brings calmness to us, or something that just going to remind us it's going to be okay, and all of these things. Well, when we look at Isaiah, we're going to look at a component that is never spoken about, that I'm aware of, when it comes to worship, and it goes beyond that emotional experience. We are emotional beings, but there's more to worship than just an emotional experience. And just go ahead and let you know, part of the worship that you see in Isaiah chapter 6 also deals with judgment. For example, you don't need to turn there. I'm just going to go over here and read just a couple of verses from Psalm chapter 7. And we know Psalms is a book of songs. There's 150 of them. David wrote around 75. This is one that he did in Psalms chapter 7. Now I want you to listen to this as he sang this song to the Lord concerning the words of Cush, a Benjamite. And this is what he said. And I wonder how many of us would ever sing a song that sounded like this. O Lord my God, in you do I take refuge. Save me from my pursuers and deliver me. We would that. Lest like a lion they tear my soul apart, rending it in pieces with none to deliver. O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there is wrong in my hands, if I have repaid my friend with evil, or plundered my enemy without cause, let the enemy pursue my soul and overtake it. How many of us pray that prayer? How many of us would sing a song to the Lord? You imagine coming here next Sunday and our worship team leads us in a song that says, "Oh, terrible scoundrel that I am, that I've been this week. Lord, you need to pass judgment upon me today." I would promise you no one would probably join in that song. We have not been geared to sing song. We want something that uplifts us. That's fine and dandy. But we're going to find out. That's only part of the worship experience. And we're going to take a look at Isaiah. And I'm going to read the passage, and then I'll make a few comments, and I'm going to go back and probably hit some things again, but maybe fill in some blanks where we need to begin to understand something different. I get it. There is something terribly wrong with me. Something terribly wrong when I pick up the Bible and read a chapter like Isaiah chapter 6, and I find problems with our worship today. Isaiah chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple, and above him stood a seraphim, and each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, with 2 he flew, with 1 he called to one another and said, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory." Let me stop there and make just a real quick comment. If you pay attention to what is said right here in this passage, it said, and it says, "And they called to one another, holy, holy, holy." They didn't say they called unto God and said, "Holy, holy, holy." They said they called to one another. Now they're not calling each other holy. I had to take a little time and think about this. There's a musical term, and now I can't even remember what it is because I'm not in the music business. But there's a musical term that, and what it means is you've got 2 groups, whether it's a choir and the congregation, or you have a soloist and the choir, whatever, and one will come in and sing one part, and the other will either come in and repeat that part, or they sing the next stanza or the next verse. In other words, it's got different groups taking part of this thing that we call worship. So one of the things being said right here, this is all are commanded to be part of this worship experience. This is why you see these heavenly creatures, they're calling out to one another, "Holy, holy, holy," and then the others cry out, "Holy, holy, holy," and in unison, this is what is going on right here. It's really important to know, because when we think about worship, it goes beyond just a song, actually way beyond the song that we're singing. Let's just keep going. Verse 4. "And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke." By the way, filled with smoke, there's a resemblance of something we're going to talk about in a few moments. Judgment in this worship. Okay. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost. I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal, and had taken with him tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, your sin atoned for. Verse 8, And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I, send me. So let's stop again. Just in case I forget this. I read that the way we always read it. Now, I've made this comment before in this church. But Isaiah, this experience that he had, he didn't answer in this tone of voice. He answered in this tone. When the question is, and I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I. I will go. Here am I with an exclamation mark. In other words, Isaiah is kind of like the kid over here that's jumping up and down, raising his hand, saying, I'll go. Pick me. Choose me. Choose me. Now let me get this clear. When you read the first 5 chapters of Isaiah, we've kind of taken a break. The Lord's given him a vision. The Lord has shown him the problems. He's showing him what he's going to be doing. Isaiah is not a lost man. This is not a passage of salvation. Isaiah is not lost. But Isaiah is getting ready to have an experience with God that's going to completely change his life. And I'm going to tell you something. When he has this, one thing that you don't hear him, the verbiage that you do not hear coming out of his mouth is, I don't have time. That you hear it from Christians. I'm telling you, the first thing that goes in our life when we get busy is the work we do for God. We kind of feel that we have done our due diligence if we just attend church. And maybe can study a little bit here or study a little bit there. Now there's some of us, there's some of you guys that are putting in a whole lot of time for the cause of Christ and to help this church out and things like that. But then there's some of us that probably are not. And there's probably some things that you need to be doing, you just don't want to do it. We're going to talk about that, but let's get the passage. Let's get it taken care of. Verse 10. Make the heart... Okay, let's back up again. Let me just back up to 9. And he said, Go and say to this people. This is the Lord talking to Isaiah. Make the heart of this people dull and their ears heavy and blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Then I said, How long, O Lord? And he said, Until cities lie waste without inhabitant, and houses without people, and the land is a desolate waste, and the Lord removes people far away, and the forsaken places are many in the midst of the land, and though a tenth remain in it, here's your remnant, like a terebinth or a terebinth or an oak, whose stump remains when it is felled, the holy seed is its stump. So here is what the Lord is telling Isaiah. You're going to go speak, but I'm not going to allow them to hear. I'm going to keep the message hid from them. That's what it's saying, guys. That sounds so not what we've always been told about God. That's exactly what is being said in Scripture. You better pay attention, because I'm telling you, even in the New Testament, the Bible talks about we're coming upon a day that the Lord said He will send a strong delusion that you will believe a lie. What is going to keep us from falling into that trap? We're going to have to dig truth back in to the church. We've got to dig truth back out of the Bible, get it back playing in the church, because the devil for the past 4 or 5 generations, if not longer, has methodically just kept dumbing down the church to believe this and this and this and this, every aspect of it, until we don't even recognize the Bible anymore. Now, I'm not saying every person, but I'm here to tell you, I would say every one of us have been greatly influenced by the way the Bible has been taught for the last 50, 60, 70 years. It didn't start out that way. And even 70, 80 years ago, we just started getting hints. And now today, it's just full-blown abomination many times. Full-blown. So we have this thing called a vision of the Lord to Isaiah. We have His commission. But even though in this passage you never see the word worship once, it is there. When you see these heavenly beasts, when you see Isaiah, he becomes so convicted of his sins that he can't do but one thing, and that's to cry out for forgiveness. So it may not use the word worship, but worship is what's going on, and the results of worship is greatly seen. So what's happening in the majority of the churches today, when we want to label it, quote and unquote, we want to call it worship, we associate that with music. You know, we especially if you come out of the charismatic Pentecostal, it's just so lively. You just love it. Oh, you just love it. I was raised Pentecostal and charismatic, and I'll be honest with you, I'll never go back. And I know some people don't like it when I say that, but I'm not saying that everything they teach is wrong. I'm not saying they get the gifts wrong. I'm just saying too much emphasis is played on emotions, and so when I was growing up, it wasn't that popular, so that they would always call me and people like me holy rollers. You know, because that's what I'm telling you. We'd run aisles, we'd jump the pews, we would just do about anything you can think of. We would do it. I've been part of that. So yeah, they won't call me a holy roller. That's okay. I called them the frozen chosen. Yeah, so all we done is called each other names. What in the world is wrong with us? When the thing about it is, even then, we were, and sometimes we don't like to admit how wrong we've been. In the Pentecostal church, you knew you had a mighty move of God in the service if one thing was left out. Preaching. Oh, it was such a powerful move of God, there wasn't even any preaching tonight. We left the word out. What an awesome meeting we had. I began to take notice that genuine, because listen guys, it was genuine. It wasn't fake, none of that stuff. But I would hear people testify at the end of that service Sunday night, because boy, the Sunday night service is usually the ones that was, man, it was a barn burner. And they would testify of what they were going to start doing and the things that were going to change in their life. And they did not get enough God out of that service to follow through on Monday morning. I know I'm hard on the Pentecostal and Charismatic, and I've still got some good friends in that, but folks, I know the manipulation that goes in there because I've done it. You have no idea many times the guys standing before you. I have got with a group of people, and I've actually been a cheerleader to work an emotion up in the people, thinking that was some type of worship. Now, I can't speak on the Baptist and Methodist and the Presbyterian and all this because I've never been part of those churches. But they've got their problems and issues too, as evident. The Methodist churches went completely bonkers, along with the Presbyterians. And the Southern Baptists, they're going about as woke as you can be. So we've all got our problems, and the reason we've got our problems is because about 4 generations ago, they started changing things, and now we are governed and we think by the things that we've been told, and we use the Bible and we study the Bible to back up what we believe, and we don't even realize we're doing it. Just like this passage, this part about worship and even judgment found in that, that's a concept that we wouldn't even think about. And I'll prove the point to you in just a moment. But what we're going to do today, and it may take me just a little bit of time, because we're going to look at some things. What should happen when we have, and let me back up for that. What is, if it's not an emotional experience, then what is this thing that Isaiah is having with God that we too should be having? And it's called an encounter. It's an encounter with God. Yes, the emotions are going to be part of us. We're human beings. We're made up of emotions. That's just a small part. And by the way, you have no idea how I worship. So when I say this, don't judge me on it, because if we've even done it in this church, or I go visit a church, or I'm somewhere and they're up there singing, they tell you to raise your hands. No, I'm not raising my hands because you just told me to. I get kind of weird about this kind of stuff. So, and Dorothy says I'm just stubborn, and she calls me a bully, and my wife calls me all these evil names. Don't even realize how much she's sinning. Because I don't want you telling me what I'm supposed to do that qualifies for worship. It's not about raising my hands. It's not about if I cry a tear. It's not about if I get emotional or not. I'm going to tell you, you will know if you had an encounter with God by what happens to you. Not right then how your emotions are playing out, but actually what happens to you that will change your life from that point forward. And we want to take a look at that. Because honestly, guys, we've got to start getting some of this right. And so if we go through some of the things that I've had to go through, now we've got to determine and ask the question, what is a genuine encounter with God and what is not? Because apparently not everything is an encounter. What are the long-term effects? What part of my life did this time get touched that emotions never have touched? And what's the difference between encountering God and being stirred up in a religious crowd? Go to the ball games with me, the races. Because let me tell you, I play the part. I'll just tell you, if you ever want to go to a NASCAR race with me, get ready to be embarrassed, because when I go, I get me all these fake tattoos that come right off. I've got the do-rag going on, and I'm sitting around and I just look like one of these Hell's Angels at his best. And so happens I got a friend of mine got me a ticket, but it wasn't with him, and he told his friend, my pastor will be sitting with you during the race. And after the race, he wanted to know where was the pastor. And said he was there. Said, no, there was some guy there in a do-rag, and I didn't know whether to talk to him or not. That was me. But before you laugh, let me tell you this story. 2 rows behind me, I know I'm getting off base a little, but 2 rows behind me, there was a guy drunk. And anytime you have an encounter with anyone, it's during the accidents, during the yellow flags, caution flags. All he wants to talk to me, why? His wife has left him, why? And I think, listen, I'm not at church today. I really don't want to hear about your problem. But I'm listening to him and I'm talking to him. I do not want to. I'm telling you, I don't. I'm there to watch the races. I'm worried about Tony Stewart. I'm not worried about this guy. But happened to be, oh my goodness, it was all caution flag after caution flag after caution flag. Every one of those things he's talking to me. And I did. I talked with him. And I thought, well, how much good is this doing? Because I don't want to, but I did. About 2 years later, I guess it was, a year or 2 years, something like that, guy walks in the church. And he says, you don't know me, do you? And I said, no, I can't say that I do. He said, I met you at the Bristol race. And I was going through a terrible divorce. And I was talking to you about it, and you were just so kind. Whoa. and he said, but I overdosed. And I found myself on a ventilator. And the only thing that I could remember was the things that you told me about God. And I gave my life to the Lord while on that ventilator. So see, you know, I didn't want to, but I did anyway. Why? What will cause you to do something that you don't want to do? It's an encounter with God. It's an encounter with God. So we have to move beyond emotions, and we have to look at, okay, honestly, not only in the Old Testament, but what does worship and the expressions of worship, what does it look like? What does it look like in the New Testament? And I run across an article last night that I borrowed some things from this article. They shed a little bit of light onto it to help me to be able to relay this on to you. So we want to talk about worship, how we know it's a genuine encounter that we're having with God, and what should life look like? Well, if I just go back and just grab verse number 1 and verse number 5, it says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting high and lifted up on his throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. And then verse 5 says, for mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. So Isaiah says a king. Now, I done just a really quick search about Isaiah that I'd never done before. And it looks like that he may have been related to King Uzziah. Now, some of the Bibles may say King Azariah, which is the same one. But anyway, King Uzziah would have been king for around 52 years. And if Isaiah is a cousin to him, then there's a good chance that he understands Uzziah and understands a monarch, because we don't understand monarchs. We are a constitutional republic with overtones of democracy, but we do not understand monarchs like you still have in some countries, or especially like Isaiah would have known here. So this King Uzziah, and apparently he was a fairly intelligent guy. The country's doing well. The army is great and mighty. And he's really got it going on. But nearing the end of his Even though it's 52 years, it's going to be cut off sooner than it should have been. The end of his term as king is getting ready to end terribly because he got so prideful because of how well the country, I guess, is doing. He decided he would go and burn incense in the temple. Well, the priest basically run him down and told him, said, listen, king, you cannot do that. He basically told him, listen, I'm king. And in kingdoms, there's no citizens. There's subjects. So I'm king. What I say goes. So I'm doing this. And he did. God struck him with leprosy. And he never, ever was allowed to enter the temple again. He just kind of went out into exile. Isaiah knew, but he understood that with the king, he has final say. Anything he wants changed, he can change. Anything he wants done, he can do. He has complete authority. It's a monarch. And so when he sees the Lord high and lifted up, he says, I see the king. So he understands this is the one I see has complete authority over everything and everyone. And instead of being a terrible and evil king, obviously he is God, so everything he does is not only right, but it is good. And Isaiah sees him, and his entire life changes. It's an encounter that Isaiah has, and it's going to change his life, as we will soon find out. So, with the king now being struck with the leprosy, Isaiah is now shown us what a real king looks like, and it goes way beyond any type of earthly power, but now he's talking about the king of the world, and he's talking about worship, because this entire process has started with a time of worship. And we see these heavenly creatures with the 6 wings, and 2 of the wings, they even hide their face. I may talk about that in a moment if we get a few minutes compared to the way it's treated today. But here's some of the things that I borrowed from this article. We're to worship with passion. Now, that's very familiar to us, but we need to understand we worship passionately, but it's not because everything that we're worshiping and thinking of God is to give us inner peace or to heal our body or to give it's not about us. Actually, if you want to make it about us, just like David, Lord, if I've done these wrongs, judge me. Judge me. This is part of what the worship that's going on. This is a byproduct of this worship. And we're to worship joyfully. No matter what happens in November, or between now and November, or if Trump gets in or Trump does not get in, God is still in control. Do not forget this. Yeah, we all want Trump to get in. We do. And I know people's going to get upset because I said that, but we do. My Lord, well, I'm not going to say that. I better just go on. But also, and I had to spend a little time right here, we must worship carefully. This is not just any old king. He doesn't worship. He is worshiped. What I mean by that, we need to be careful. We need to be really careful. This is not a God that we can refuse worship without consequences. And I honestly believe with everything in me, we need to recapture, retake, whatever word you want to find, this truth and present it in our day. Because most of the worship that you see that you can pull up on, and it doesn't matter if it's charismatic or if it's part of the frozen chosen, most of the worship that you see in church focus on the greatness of God's love and the beauty of His presence. And if God is great, and He is, then we are to obey. Period. But the purpose of recognizing God's greatness, if we don't obey this great God, if He isn't great, then don't. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, guys, we can't play with this any longer. He either is God and demands and should be worshipped, or He does not. And if He is, and we all agree with He is, then what's going on in our life? I get in trouble with this, but a truly great God is a God to be feared. And I know, first thing, the Christians want to come back, because remember, we have to get God down to our level. Yeah, we fear Him. He's in awe. We're in awe of Him. Well, that's true, but I'm here to tell you, the Bible tells us that we should not fear the man that can take our life. But we should fear the one that can not only take our life and damn our soul into hell. I'm telling you, you better be afraid of God. You better not be treating Him like your bud and think that you get mad at God, you just shake your fist at Him and say whatever you want to. Bad idea. Bad idea. This is the king that Isaiah is talking about. We must obey Him in the entirety of our life. Everything about our life, anything that the Lord asks from us, it must be met with the same response of Isaiah. But you can't manufacture that. You can't make that up. You might say it and not mean it. No, if you've had a true encounter, you will say it and you will mean it. And you will follow through. God is this person to be feared. We talked about these creatures with the 6 wings. 2 of the wings, they cover their face. Why do they cover their face? Because they cannot stand to stare in the face of God. Unlike today, 29 minutes in heaven. This person, I go to heaven every day. I go to heaven every day. In this heaven, Jesus is such a cool dude. He and I went swimming, and we got in the pool, and we started splashing each other. What pure nonsense. Or this one, Kat Kerr. Look up Kat Kerr. She's a loon. I probably shouldn't call her loons, but of course now I've called her a loon 3 times. By trying not to call her a loon. I mean, she's the one that says, oh yeah, Jesus said that he would be in trouble. He would be in trouble if He didn't make somewhere fun for kids, so He has Christmas Town. And in Christmas Town, like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, you can eat all the chocolate you want and it just never goes away. When the little boy that said he went to heaven, and I said he didn't, and Christians just didn't like it because I made that comment. And I make that based upon things you read in the Bible. And then come out about 15 years later, he was lying. Folks, these people that tell you they're going to heaven, they're not. Paul, one that we do know that went to heaven, he was not even allowed to give the experience that he's seen. And these guys talk about Jesus like he's their buddy. Most of our worship songs that we sing focus either on the beauty of God, His presence, His vastness, the love of God. And that's true. That is very, very true. But how many right now can think of a worship song that we sing that has the word judgment in it? Or has the word wrath in it? Hello? Guys, we must admit we've fallen into, we've drunk the Kool-Aid. Well, no, Pastor, I'm not that way. Really? How many of us have made this statement? God bless America. Why would we ask God to bless something that probably ranks, if not the greatest evil in the world? Why would we ask God to bless it? Would we ask God to bless this group of pedophiles or human traffickers? Would we ask God to bless that group? Absolutely not. No, and in my opinion, and I know people think I'm crazy, and I am, but my opinion, the best thing God could do for us is allow some hard times to come to our home. The best thing that God could do for us is something to give us a shock and awe factor to push us back to Him, because we don't need Him today. And we don't have that encounter with Him where it completely changes us to the point that, Lord, yeah, you're saying these people are not going to have a clue what I'm talking about. They're not going to have a clue. They're not going to listen. Even Ezekiel was told, Ezekiel, these people are not speaking a foreign language. You're speaking the same language. So you're going to go to them, but I'm telling you, they're not going to hear. So He's telling Ezekiel, go and talk to the people and tell the people, thus saith the Lord, but they're not going to listen. But go anyway. Why could Ezekiel do that? Why could Isaiah do that, knowing the people were not going to listen? Because of the encounter they had with the real God. And that's what's lacking in our life today. We need that encounter, something that is just going to catapult us into some type of relationship with Him that we've been cheated out of. Think about what we do in this nation. Let's not even talk about our corrupt government with the corrupt laws that they pass. But let's go back, I guess, to Clintons in the 90s. And Clintons passed something, and the Christians celebrated. DOMA, D-O-M-A, Defense of Marriage Act. And the Christians, and he celebrated, the Defense of Marriage Act, so they come on record to say marriage is between one man and one woman. The Christians celebrated. Didn't have enough insight, didn't have enough direction from God to realize what a huge mistake was just made. I happened to be sitting with another guy that said, bad move. Because now we've allowed the government to define something that should only be defined by the Word of God. So now we get the 2015 or whenever it was, Defense of Marriage Act. I'm in a battle of words with the guy in Knoxville. And the news medias are coming up here and they're talking to him. I'm talking to every news media in Knoxville, and they're putting us against each other because now I'm having to make a stand on this Defense of Marriage Act because the Supreme Court just said a man and a woman and a woman. See? We pass laws, we redefine the family, we redefine marriage, and we profess belief in God while we fashion over to these lifestyles. And the church is not starting. The church has bought into this mental muck. And then you come, and the ladies used to get upset at me. I don't think they do anymore, or they finally give up telling me. Whenever I come out really strong against Beth Moore, this woman, what in the world is wrong with her? I mean, first of all, her doctrine of everybody she had sitting there representing every type of religion that you can think of is all part of the body. What foolishness. But she treats her encounter with God like she's on a date. Listen to her sometime. Talk about Jesus like you would hear girls talk about their boyfriends. No, this is not sappy romance relationship. This is a relationship. He is God. I am not. He is in charge. I am not. He says, I do. And all of that type of worship being laid out, with all the emotion and however much emotion we can make. And guys, see, I've even had to live on the other side of this 4 or 5 years, even into my preaching after I left the Pentecostal church. I had my Pentecostal friends that would come up and tell me, said, one day, Pastor, you'll preach. And I know what they meant. They was waiting for me to really cut a rug up here and do something like turn flips or something. This fat boy can't turn flips. Now, I'm not saying the emotion's wrong. I'm just saying, where's the encounter? How do you know if you've had an encounter? Isaiah said, I see God, His throne, high and lifted up. Where is the throne in all of this? Isaiah, Ezekiel, all these greats not in the Bible, and our church fathers that are not in the Bible, these guys had real encounters with the real God, and it changed the world in which they lived. It changed. Because they had an encounter, not some gooey, romantic, not some mystical trance, not some whatever. I mean, we went on vacation, and I was looking for us to go to a church, and we went into one, and they spent 45 minutes having everybody cast out their spirits that they had in them, so that now we could have another 45 minutes to bring the Spirit back in us. You walk out of that place. I've got more, but I'm going to quit because I did in the early service. I may pick it back up. The point being, guys, when we come to worship, there better be an encounter with God. Not just an emotional experience, but a true encounter. And the only way that you're going to know is that you're going to be just like Isaiah. First of all, you're going to feel so undone. A man of unclean lips. Because you've had an encounter with God. It's not too late. There's still enough good God's people that's doing the best they can live out the truth and share the truth. And I'm going to quit with this. Because in order to live the truth, you have to share it. There's no getting away from it. And if you think going out and sharing the truth is going to make people just bubble for joy and they're going to really want to hear you, you're wrong. Let me tell you, they don't want to hear it. 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 But you're going to tell it because you've had an encounter. If all you've had is an emotional experience, you will remain silent.